Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 81 and 82 of Steven Universe, Same Old World, and Barnmates. And since these episodes are meant to be an epilogue for the episodes that came before, once again, we gotta do another recap. I apologize that I keep doing these things, but that's what happens when you're looking at episodes that are all part of one continuing story arc. And to recap briefly, Peridot is now a member of the Crystal Gems, and she worked together with them to attempt to stop a gem superweapon that was burrowed beneath the Earth called the Cluster. Steven and Peridot managed to reach the cluster using a drill, and Steven managed to convince the cluster to not form as it didn't want to destroy the Earth. So now it's just resting in a giant bubble beneath the Earth, and the world is safe. On top of that, so the Crystal Gems finally found Malachite, and after engaging in a very kick-ass battle with her, they managed to unfuse Lapis and Jasper, thus stopping Malachite and saving Lapis, though Jasper was sadly lost in the ensuing earthquakes as the cluster tried to form. So, all's well that ends well. And Same Old World picks up from that as the Crystal Gems are back at the barn, and Steven and Peridot are telling them about what happened, with Lapis sleeping in the barn. While Peridot is, of course, embellishing the story to hell and back because, well, she's an arrogant, haughty bitch. But at the same time, Steven, however, is more worried about Lapis and even goes to check on her in the barn, but finds that she's still unconscious and is clearly just tossing and turning in her sleep. Garnet tells Steven not to worry, that she'll be fine, but she was fused with Jasper for quite a long time, and she fought her off. Throughout the entire time. So obviously she's going to be physically and emotionally exhausted, so maybe she does need to be left alone. As such, Steven does go back to continue telling more of the story, but that night, as he's taking a rest, he hears a commotion in the barn, and when he goes to check, he finds that Lapis is up and running and pretty much ready to leave. While Steven is happy that she's all right, at the same time, he's a little saddened that she wants to go. But he also understands because, she doesn't really have anything on Earth that she wants to stay for. Yeah, she's friends with Steven, but she doesn't believe she belongs to the Crystal Gems, and she was a prisoner here for most of her life. So yeah, it's probably a good bet that she would want to leave. So Steven is understanding of her. She says thank you and then flies off. So yeah, it looks like that she's gone for good. But then the next day rolls around. As everybody is leaving, Steven says that everybody should go on ahead. He'll meet up with him on Lion. But as he's searching around for Lion, he ends up seeing Lapis back. And she's just sitting on a silo, just kind of doing her own thing. Steven decides to ask what the heck's going on, so he climbs the silo and talks to Lapis. And she reveals that she realized she couldn't go home, as, well, the last time she went there, she was captured and interrogated. And considering that she came to Earth alongside Peridot and Jasper, there's a good chance that if she went home, they would want to know what the hell happened and probably treat her like the enemy again. So she realizes she can't go home either, but that also means she has no idea where to go. Steven recommends that she could actually try staying on Earth, which she's a little hesitant towards, but Steven offers to show her around the planet, and maybe she'll find some place she likes. And so Lapis, well, somewhat reluctantly, does agree to do it, but she is at least happy that she's doing it with Steven, which, that's another thing I like about the episode. You actually see Lapis happy and joyful and actually trying to be a bit of a goofball, which I think is nice. I'll get to my thoughts on that in the end, but Pretty much, Lapis carries Steven on her back, and they just start flying around the Earth. They check out a forest, and so Lapis gets a chance to take in the leaves. They go to this universe's version of New York / Las Vegas called Empire City, which with Steven proposing that maybe she could get an apartment there. And then of course they fly through Jersey. Because no matter what kind of idealized universe you live in where there are no wars, Jersey is still a thing and the people there are still shit. Disclaimer: if you are from Jersey, I am so sorry. I'm sure you are very decent. I'm sure you're very decent. I'm just going with the episode. Please don't hate me. I don't want to be hated by anyone. But bottom line, yeah, they just seem to be. Lapis is kind of taking it all in, and as Steven provides commentary, you can see her getting more into it and enjoying herself. She's goofing around more with Steven, being a bit more witty and sarcastic, but it's clear that she's not meaning any harm. She's just doing light teasing, and it's just kind of fun. They're fun. They even do tricks in the air as they fly above the clouds, and she even tries flipping around and grabs Steven by the arms and just flies. It's clear that she's now just having more fun, but all that kind of gets derailed as they end up flying so far off land that they end up in the middle of the ocean, specifically the galaxy warp. yeah, by which I mean they find the galaxy war, whatever. But when Lapis sees it, she seems to go into a trance to the point where she almost drops Steven. Thankfully she doesn't, but she does bring him to the warp, and Steven wants to know what's going on. As such, we end up seeing another little extension of Lapis's powers, which is probably why she was put in the mirror in the first place, that she can turn water and use it to actually showcase what she remembers. And so as such, using the homeworld warp and the water from the surrounding ocean, she manages to create an image of her memories, and it's here we learn more about Lapis's backstory. That the thing is, while Lapis was a homeworld gem, she was not originally part of the war. Pretty much, she was the gem equivalent of a civilian caught in the crossfire. She had come to Earth we don't know, she had originally been sent to Earth for some kind of purpose, most likely based on what I learned in future, most likely it could have been terraforming. But while she was on Earth, that's when the Gem War broke out. She wasn't fighting for either side in that regard. She wasn't a soldier and she wasn't a rebel. She was just, like I said, just a civilian casualty. And sadly, that's in more ways than one, as while she did try to flee the battle, one of the gems, incidentally a crystal gem, which we'll get to later, wound up poofing her. And when her gem was found, it was found by a homeworld gem who thought that she was with the crystal gems. Hence why she was put in the mirror, as they wanted to use her to learn whatever they could about the crystal gems. And unfortunately, Lapis, while in the mirror, could not communicate. I'm guessing this is before she learned that she could use what she had seen to repeat things. I think that's the case, because they stated that I did ask her a bunch of questions that were supposed to be about the crystal gems, like where's your base, who's your leader, blah 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 blah, but she couldn't answer and she couldn't tell them I'm not with them. As such, that's how she stayed for the remainder of the war, and when things got too intense, the homeworld gems wound up fleeing Earth and wound up leaving her behind, with her gem getting cracked because she had been dropped and someone accidentally stepped on it. As such, which also leads us to an image which will become important later, as all the homeworld gems end up fleeing Earth, there is a bright flash of white light in the sky before everything goes quiet. And for the longest time, Lapis was just stuck on Earth, specifically the galaxy warp, just trapped in the mirror, unable to do anything, which is where the crystal gems eventually found her. And, of course, since the crystal gems didn't trust any other gems, because, hey, their kind were conquerors, and the last time they encountered them, they tried to take over this planet, they decided to just keep her in the mirror, most likely thinking that she was dormant, and that the mirror was just something that could repeat things that it had shown. So yeah, so basically, that was just her backstory, and from there, obviously, we know the rest, but pretty much she states that, yeah, it gives you perspective on just what kind of hell she went through, and it really is sad when you think about it, especially considering that it means that she's been kind of on the whims of other people almost her entire life. And now that even she laments that even though she's now free of the mirror, she still feels like a prisoner, because first she was the mirror, then she was a prisoner when she went homeworld, and now she can't even go back to homeworld. She's stuck on Earth, and she doesn't have any idea where to go. But Steven counters that, well, just because she's stuck on Earth doesn't mean that she's stuck. Because, well, Earth is always changing. The sites are always changing. The seasons change. The cities change. Even Jersey changes. Pretty much she could go anywhere and she'll be able to do something with her life. She'll be able to do something. And the thing is, she says she's trapped on Earth, she's really not. She could leave anytime she wants. No one is going to force her to stay. Even if she could go anywhere else, but if she wants to stay on Earth now, it can be her choice, and Steven even laments that. Before you argue that she is technically trapped on Earth, the thing is, she's not. In a later episode, she does eventually try to leave. I'll get to that when I get to that. And she can go anywhere else in the galaxy, but it's just that Steven's saying maybe you could stay on Earth. And unlike the last few times that she was brought to Earth, this time it could be her choice, and she could do whatever she wants. As such, Lapis takes that in, and after she and Steven return back to the barn, she decides that maybe she could stay on Earth, because despite being on Earth all this time, she's never really gotten the chance to see it, to know it, and she thinks that maybe she'll want to start here, specifically the barn. And Steven, of course, is excited about that, until Peridot shows up because, well, she didn't leave. It turns out, yeah, I forgot to mention this. Peridot decided that she's going to stay at the barn because, well, there's no room in the temple. She doesn't have a room, and she doesn't want to stay in the bathroom again because she knows what Steven does in there. So, she wants to stay in the barn because, well, it could be like a little makeshift workshop. However, the instant that Lapis sees Peridot, she starts freaking out and wants Steven to tell Lapis wants Steven to tell Peridot to get lost, and Steven's kind of at a crossroads there, which is where Barnmates comes in, because Peridot, well, she's all happy to get a roommate, especially Lapis, and she tries to make nice with her, but Lapis is not going for it. Why? Well, for a kind of a tiny reason, not a big one, not a big deal really. It's because the last time Lapis saw Peridot captured her and interrogated her and forced her to return to Earth. As her prisoner. So yeah, kind of a big thing, actually. So yes, obviously, Peridot really does not... So yeah, obviously, for justifiable reasons, Lapis wants nothing to do with Peridot. And while Peridot does try to come up with some certain compromises, by which I mean Steven tries splitting the barn in half, Lapis thinks that maybe this isn't going to work out after all, and decides to spend her time back on the silo. As such, Steven and Peridot begin trying to think of ways to get Lapis to warm up to Peridot. And each one ends in failure. Like, they try writing her a card, but because Peridot wrote too much from the heart, i.e. she said, "I'm sorry for interrogating you, but you had such useful information," which really does not sound as complimentary as she thinks it does. It doesn't work. So when they try making her a makeshift pool from the hole that they got made from the drill, Lapis reveals that because of all the trauma she had with Malachite, she wants nothing to do with water for a while, which also leads to a very backhanded line where she tells Steven, "It's okay, Steven, it's not your fault," before just staring dead-eye at Peridot and flying away. And then finally, Peridot does try to do something that really is, well, personal to her. She tries to gift Lapis her tape recorder because, well, it means a lot to her. It allowed her to organize her thoughts and so forth. And she thinks that maybe it could be that way for Lapis, that she could have something to confide in, to talk through everything. And the instant Lapis gets the tape recorder, the first thing she does is record "I don't want your garbage" before crushing it in her hands. At this point, Peridot finally just snaps and yells at Lapis, which at first I thought was kind of cold, though to be fair, what Lapis did was also pretty cold too. But she ultimately breaks down why she is so desperately wanting Lapis to be her friend. It's not just because she wants to make amends and show she's a better person, it's because she feels lonely. The thing is, while Peridot is good with staying on Earth, and this kind of does lead back into what happened in the Gem Drill episode, she feels alone on Earth. This is a new place that she knows nothing about. It doesn't feel like home yet. Things are still strange to her. She still feels like a stranger in a strange land, all by herself with no one to turn to. But in Lapis, she sees someone that's like her. Someone who doesn't know anything about what's going on, who doesn't understand everything, and that she thinks maybe, just maybe, I can share this with her. Maybe we can confide in each other. Maybe we don't have to be alone. And so, when she says that, but however, the entire time she's saying this, Lapis is just glaring at her, and when she finally ends the speech by saying, "Just tell me what you want and I'll do it," Lapis yells at her and tells her to leave, which Peridot, obviously heartbroken, says okay to and walks away. Steven does start kind of slightly chastising Lapis for this, but Lapis does argue why Steven is so willing to trust her, but it's because Steven has taken the time to get to know her. Which, honestly, I'm kind of okay with it. I like the scene, though I can feel like there is some easy that there can be some easy criticism about it. Because Steven states that Lapis is not taking the time to try to get to know Peridot. She just already assumed that she didn't like her, which, in a way, does make sense. She's pre-deciding that Peridot's bad news without really getting to know her. The problem with that is that, unfortunately, well, what Peridot did to Lapis is not really something that will make someone want to start a conversation. I wouldn't want to be if there was someone who trapped me in a cellar door for a week, and then after I got let out, I saw them later and "Hey man, I'm the guy that locked you away, but I went to prison. I'm all better now. How you doing?" I wouldn't exactly be wanting to get chummy with that guy. In this case, so it makes sense why Lapis does it. At the same time, I do kind of believe in the whole people can change mentality, and people can change. But by that same token, in order for someone that you've hurt to come around, it has to be a two-way streak. Yes, you can show to them, look, I'm better now, I can change, I'm doing good, but the past can't just be wiped away because, well, we don't want to think about it. The past does help define us. It's what makes us who it was. And sadly, the bad has just as much sway as the good, maybe even more so in some cases. So of course Lapis is going to be angry at Peridot, because Peridot pretty much trapped her, made her another prisoner, and then forced her into something that she didn't want to do, interrogated her. Of course, Lapis is gonna still be angry at that. And yes, Peridot has changed. She's changed for the better. She's become a good guy, a good person, and is actively trying to be better. But again, if Peridot wants Lapis to be friends with her, it does take time. To kind of go on a slight tangent here, and I'm sorry I'm doing this during the plot summary, it's just that this is all coming to my head. I once read a comic, I forgot the name of it. It was about a boy who was sent to an all-girls school, but all the girls there were fighters. Of course, it was supposed to be like typical harem shenanigans, but the primary love interest of the comic that I read, which is, it was an online comic, whatever, I'm getting off topic. The central love interest at first was antagonistic to him because of her experience with men. She thought that she initially wrote him off, and she treated him like dirt. And every time that he tried to make amends, things just seemed to go worse, and her attitude towards him got worse and worse, to the point where when an upcoming tournament came up, she was able to choose, and since she was a top student, she was able to choose who she could fight, and she wound up choosing him because she wanted to teach him a lesson. Well, then she eventually got the chance to get to know him, and learned why he was even at the school at all. His parents had screwed off, he was taking care of his two younger siblings, and was actively and when the only reason he was at the school was because they had offered him a scholarship because he was the trial run for co-ed education. So, in that regard, and as a result, when she learns how desperately he is, and that when it comes to even his daily life, he's constantly crapped on, she started realizing, oh shit, I'm the bad guy here. And when she finally did realize just how much of a decent person she was, she did try to backpedal. She did try to get back on his good side and say, look, I'm sorry, but look, if you fight me, I don't have, if you fight me, it'll get you, it'll get you so much attention, you'll be even more popular, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, he didn't want popularity, he just wanted an education and to slip under the radar. And because she kept abusing him and doing all this, when she finally did try to make amends to him, he rightfully told her to screw off. And she did. And I'm not saying that she just left the comic, but at the same time, what she did and how antagonistic she was not just forgotten. It was registered, and through a big chunk of the comic afterwards, any interaction between them is her slowly rebuilding that trust. Emphasis on slowly. And it's done in a way that she's trying to give him more trust. She helps him in ways that he needs it. She doesn't force it. She actively is trying to do the right thing on him and his siblings. She actively tries to make amends for her earlier actions. And eventually, yes, she is forgiven. They do manage to form a relationship and become cordial to each other to the point where they can be considered friends, potentially lovers, but that's at the end of the comic, and I haven't read that far. But it's a relationship that is built, and by the end she does make amends, but it took time. Stuff like that doesn't just happen overnight. You can't just say, oh, I'm sorry, man, and then they get over it. So, going back to what this leads to with Steven Universe, with Lapis, of course she's still going to be angry with Peridot. Of course she's still going to not want to be around her. Of course she's not going to want to give her the time of day. Yes, Peridot is doing all these things, but it's going to take a bit more time. If Lapis genuinely wants things to get better, well, Peridot sadly would need to do more. Which, yeah, so I can understand both sides of that regard, that she does need to give, that if she wants to be friends with Peridot, she needs to give her a chance to stop being antagonistic towards her, but by that same token, it's not just going to happen because someone wants it to. But however, going back to the actual plot summary, sorry a second, hold on. Sorry, puppy doing puppy things. Pretty much, Peridot ends up running back screaming, and the reason for that? She's being pursued. She's being pursued. In this case, it's by a ship called a roaming eye, which is supposed to be a gem tracking ship, which is apparently trying to track Peridot. Peridot assumes it's after her because she told Yellow Diamond off, so she thinks she's now public enemy number one, and Yellow Diamond wants her head on a pike. So she, Lapis, and Steven end up running back to the barn, but because of the big hole that Peridot put in the barn with her giant robot, which she is still repairing, well, the roaming eye is able to catch up to them well, and while they're able to run outside the barn, it's still catching up to them and even managed to corner them. So everything seems to be looking grim. Peridot's hiding behind Steven. Steven's ready to stand up and protect her, but Lapis decides to finally intervene. And what I like is that she clearly does not want to do this, but Steven's vouching for... But just as that Peridot gave the crystal gems a chance because Steven vouched for them, it's clear at this point that Lapis is only going to try and tolerate Peridot because Steven is vouching for her. And so what does Lapis do? She uses the little pool that Steven and Peridot made and creates a giant hand that flips the ship and then smacks it back down to the ground, creating a diamond shape where it crashes. As the ship is seemingly put out of commission, and once everything is once it's taken care of, Peridot does try to sneakily creep away, but Lapis does stop her and asks, and kind of reluctantly says, "Are you okay?" And Peridot just kind of beams up and just starts beaming like the biggest smile. It's honestly adorable. Like, she's just so happy that Lapis finally talked to her. What I love is that when Lapis sees her smile, she just starts blushing like, ah, crap. It's adorable. It's when she's starting to realize, crap, I'm starting to like her. It's nice. But at that point, the other crystal gems arrive because they saw the ship coming and wanted to be sure that Steven was safe. But as everyone is still trying to gather their wits, the episode ends as the ship finally opens and we see who its occupant is. Or, well, one of the occupants anyway. And it turns out it's a ruby soldier with a gem for an eye. So, yeah, that's where that episode ends. So we'll have to talk about that next week. But as for the episode itself, what are my thoughts on it? Or the episodes themselves? Well, let's talk about Same Old World. Same Old World really does feel like a breather. In that regard, I think both of these episodes are, but Same Old World even more so, because, for one thing, this is after all the stuff with Malachite and the cluster has all been taken care of. So it's finally a chance for the characters to take a breather, for them to just finally relax, finally enjoy themselves, actually take this shit in. And it's nice, and it's nice. And what helps make it a breather is, well, Steven talking with Lapis. For one thing, what makes it better in the context of the episode is that we finally get to see Lapis when she's not in an aggressive mood or she's not running from someone. We see Lapis now that she's kind of free. And in that regard, when you see her exploring the Earth with Steven, you start to see more of her positive side. We start to see more of the side of her that we saw in Mirror Gem. You know, the Joker, the one who likes to be kind of a goofball and mess around. And we see that when she and Steven just start exploring. And I think that's another thing that helps make the episode feel like a breather episode, because they're just exploring and doing their own thing. They're seeing all the sights on Earth, which actually do look pretty nice. The backgrounds for all the places they go to look really cool. When they go through the forest and they see the leaves changing, it really does look pretty with the mixes of greens, oranges, and browns with the breeze going through. And I love Lapis's reaction when she sees leaves, because, again, going back she's never really had a chance to explore Earth thing, this is the first time seeing a planet where things change, and it's like she's wide-eyed at it. She's curious, and she's in awe of it. It's actually pretty nice. And then, of course, when they get to Empire City, it looks very pretty with flashing lights, the big towering buildings. It's a nice little mix of pinks and purples and blacks. It's all just really nice, and it really does feel like this version it really does feel like a nice equivalent of the Steven Universe version of the city that never sleeps. And it really does work well. And Steven's commentary throughout it, it's goofy, but fun. It's childish in a way. Like when Steven proposed that Lapis could live on the country, that she could say, you could build a tree house and have squirrels for pets, and you could just live off the land. Or he says when she goes to Empire City, you can have an apartment, get a job at a coffee shop, have a wacky roommate, and be a single gem taking on the world. And Lapis's dry response is, I have no idea what you're even talking about. It's just, I love that. And then of course I love how they introduced Jersey. It's just like, hey, what's that dark place? And it's just a road with a bunch of cars honking each other. The air is covered in smog. And Steven says, "You like it here in Jersey. The people here seem to hate the Earth too." And then one guy that off screen yells at Steven and Lapis to get out of their skies for throwing a shoe at them. It's great. Which again also leads more into Lapis's goofier attitude as we see her as she and Steven end up doing a fart with their hands. And then as they're flying around and laughing, and Steven asks her opinion, Lapis' opinion on it, she just says, I guess it's alright. I can kind of see why you like it here. That's nice. I love that sort of thing. I love seeing this attitude with her. And throughout the whole episode, it really does feel like a breath of fresh air, because the biggest conflict in this episode is just wondering where Lapis is going to go now. And yeah, that's a big decision, but the way they're handling it isn't something like big and dire. It's just a friend helping out a friend. Steven is helping Lapis not because he has no choice, that she needs to find a place to stay or else, I don't know, she'll blow up a town. She's doing it because, well, she doesn't know where to go. And so Steven is recommending places he knows because because he cares about Lapis, because he wants her to be happy. It's sweet. It's nice. It's great to see them just interacting off each other and goofing off. But what makes it better is that it also kind of gives you another window into Lapis. Not just her backstory, but her journey and her character arc. But on the one hand, I do like that we do see more of Lapis's backstory, that you do learn the exact circumstances that led her to being trapped in the mirror and subsequently end up in the possession of the crystal gems. But what also works in that regard is that it also kind of gives you a window into what Lapis's character arc is. Because yes, she is going to have a character arc. In this case, what makes it work with Lapis is that her whole life, she's always been existing at the whims of others. When she arrived on Earth, she was poofed and then trapped within a mirror, unable to do anything. And then when salvation seemed to be on the horizon, she just wound up being a prisoner of the other side. And then when she was finally free from the mirror and finally managed to get home, go back to her home world, she was captured again and turned into another prisoner, forced to exist on the whims of another. And then when she finally did end up, and then when she got free of them, she was made a prisoner again when Jasper wanted her to fuse with her to form Malachite. And the whole time, as a result, she had to make herself a prisoner. She had to make herself a prisoner as she wound up latching herself in Jasper below the ocean as Malachite. And now that she's fine, so this is, and now from her perspective, she feels like she's trapped again because she thinks she's stuck on Earth. But that's what makes it really interesting and for her character arc. In that regard, this is one of the first times that she has her own agency. In this regard, the prison that she's forming is a metaphorical one. She thinks she's trapped on Earth, but there's so much she can do now. And that's kind of the central root of her character arc right now at this moment. Finding herself, forging her own path, doing her own thing. Actually allowing herself to grow and not exist at the whims of others. Yes, she's doing all this because of Steven's recommendation, but that's the thing. It's because of Steven's recommendation. He's not telling her, you should stay on Earth. He's saying, he just suggests it and gives reasons why. He's never going to force her and say, he's just saying, look, I understand what you're going through, but here are things that I think are cool about the Earth, and if you like them too, then maybe you can consider staying. If not, there's plenty of other places you can go to if you want, as long as you're happy. It's clear throughout the whole thing that Steven is not trying to push anything on her. Yes, he'd prefer if she stayed on Earth, but if that's not her choice, then that's not her choice. And he wants her to, he wants it to be something that she chooses, nobody else. And that's ultimately what makes the whole character arc with her interesting. Her whole life, she's always been existing at the whims of others, either as a worker or as a prisoner. Now, she finally has a chance to be free. And from there, you see her, when she finally does say, I want to stay on Earth, it's ultimately her decision. It's the first step in her making her own path. And that's by that same token, it also does give us a little window into how she handles negativity, specifically towards people that she does care about. And we see that briefly in this episode when she wakes up after her whole debacle with Malachite. She almost runs away. And when she doesn't run away, she doesn't immediately go back to Steven. He has to go to her. He has to seek her out. So, and the thing is, I'm not going to say anything right now. Haley's the spoiler one. She's going to hate me for that. But pretty much, I'm not going to say anything right now, but this is not the first time she runs away from her friends when when things are when she want. This is not the first time she runs away, and when she does try coming back, she doesn't go back to the people that she ran away from. She just goes somewhere nearby, close enough to see them, but not interact with them. It kind of does show more of her kind of the turmoil she puts herself through in those kinds of situations, and it's an interesting thing, and it's another thing that helps kind of feed into the forging her own path thing, because sadly, while she is free at the moment, there are still some prisons that she needs to work her way out of, specifically of the metaphorical variety and emotional kind. So, I do like seeing how that progresses through the episode, and by the end of it, when Lapis does decide to stay on Earth and just kind of do her own thing, it's nice. Like, again, she's not officially on the side of the crystal gems, but at this point she really is not the enemy. She wants to be friends with them, and she wants to explore this strange world now. Yes, because, well, she won't, because she feels that because on this world she feels that there are more possibilities for her than just being a prisoner and running away. She actually is free. She can do what she wants, and she wants to do that, and the first thing she wants to do is stay at the barn. I like that. It's sweet, and it does work well towards actually building up her character arc while also acting as a breather, which also leads us into barnmates. What I like about that episode is that it does kind of serve as a dual side, as kind of a dual thing for Peridot's character growth. Because, yeah, when you're a bad guy turned good guy, you're gonna have baggage. You can't just everything that you've done in your past cannot just be undone because you're suddenly a good person now. Those things still happened, and ultimately you do still have to deal with the fallout. And that's kind of how it works with Lapis and Peridot. Despite Peridot now being a part of the Crystal Gems and wanting to help the Earth, well, of course, Lapis wants something to do with her because of what she did when she was still one of the bad guys. And so throughout the episode, Peridot is dead. We see it kind of there is some nice amusing antics as Peridot keeps trying to get on Lapis's good side. But the thing is, the episode does make it clear that this is still an uphill battle. We do see why Peridot is pushing so desperately to get Lapis to like her, because she feels lonely on this planet and it doesn't feel like home yet, and she wants someone there that she can share that with. So, like, she can't really confide in the gems. They've lived here for a long time, thousands of years, honestly. And Steven, well, he was born and raised on Earth. Well, actually, same with Amethyst. But so of course they feel at home here. But Peridot, she was an invader. She came to Earth to check on the gem superweapon and then got stuck here. Again, she does not understand this planet, and now that she's finally ready to want to settle down and stay here, well, it still doesn't feel like home to her. It takes time, and she feels like she's a fish out of water. She doesn't know what to do, and sadly, as such, she just wants someone to confide in, and that's why she keeps trying to push her with Lapis. She wants to try and get Lapis to open up to her. She wants Lapis to be friends with her because she wants someone to talk to. But the problem is that the person she wants to talk to wants nothing to do with her, and for justifiable reasons. Again, going back to the whole redemption arc thing, it takes time for that sort of thing for wounds like that to heal. And that's what I think works well with Lapis. Yes, she does act cold throughout the episode despite Peridot trying her best to get on her good side. Like, she makes the card, which is sloppily done. She makes her a pool, which unintentionally wound up triggering some of Lapis's trauma with Malachi. And then by the end, when she does give her something heartfelt and nice, Lapis just stomps on it. That one is probably one of the few moments where I think, okay, that's cold, because I feel like that's one of the few instances where Lapis is in the wrong. Just one of the few. Just one of the very few. Because this is one of those things that I think would have showcased to Lapis that Peridot does want to change. That Peridot is trying to make amends. But Lapis's response is to pretty much give her the proverbial middle finger and then crush something that she held so dearly. Now, again, Peridot captured Lapis and imprisoned her, justifiably so. But at the same time, it's clear that Peridot is also trying to put her best foot forward here and is trying her best. And while I don't begrudge Lapis for being angry with her, at the same time, I feel like that she should have at least recognized some of the effort. I could still see her just saying I don't want this and then just dropping it, but to add the extra salt to the wound by crushing it, that's a nice little bit of screw you. At the same, so I don't know. Maybe I'm in the wrong here. Maybe I'm in the wrong. Maybe Lapis wasn't being much of a douchebag. Maybe that could be justified. But at the same time, I think that was pushing it just a little too far. But again, at the same time, I do like that they clearly showcase that Peridot earning Lapis's trust is an uphill battle. By the end of the episode, when Lapis defends Peridot against the roaming eye, it's clear that the only reason she's doing it is because Steven is vouching for her. Like how when Lapis finally decided to start trusting the crystal gems because Steven said that she could. The only reason that Lapis is giving Peridot the time of day is because she trusts Steven. Like with Peridot before, Lapis is one of the few crystal gems Steven is one of the few crystal gems that Lapis trusts. I'm getting all the names mixed up. Steven is one of the few crystal gems that Lapis trusts. And if he says that Peridot is worth the effort to get to know, then Lapis is willing to do it. It's something that she clearly does not want to do. She still is obviously holding some negative feelings for her. And when she defends Peridot from the roaming eye, she is angry the whole time. And it's clear that what she's doing is just a fraction of the anger she's feeling towards Peridot right now. But at the same time, when she finally does say to tell Peridot that she hopes she's okay, and Peridot lights up, you can see that it's starting to lessen a little. Not completely gone. Like when she feels happy that Peridot is smiling, you can tell that she's trying to stifle that. It's like, no, I'm not happy. But at the same time, when she does realize that Peridot genuinely is happy that they're friends, that she's trying, you can tell that she also feels something because this is probably the second person that she's able to start forming a connection to, and it's someone that she doesn't want to form a connection with. And she realizes, crap, I'm starting to like her. It's kind of amusing, but at the same time also sweet because it's clear that this is the first step toward them building a friendship. And it's really nice, and like I said, they do showcase that it is going to be an uphill battle. But it's a battle worth fighting, and it's very interesting to see it start here. So again, it does fit more into the character arcs with both sides, as Peridot has to deal with the fallout of her actions from the past, while also showcasing that there are steps to be taken, that it's not hopeless, that there will that in Lapis's eyes she'll get that redemption, but for now they're still kind of at a distance. So I like that. I do like that. So, but yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and tune in next week where we finally get to see what the crew of that roaming eye was after when they came to Earth, and we finally see the crystal gems return to their home. So until then, I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.